Hello and welcome to the final episode of season 2 of Listen Loudly. This is a roundup episode. I do not have any guests. It is just me, myself, and I reflecting on the season and my wonderful guests. And it just feels nice to, have that little reflection piece. You know that I love to reflect on all the things all the time. So I've loved all the guests that I've had on each season. I'm aware that I'm only 2 seasons in. I'm acting like I've got 10 seasons. But again, I feel very fortunate to have basically worked with, apart from one, every guest that I had on the show this season. And so I want to, before I say that, one thing that I feel really came across with this season's guests were this speaking of and for their own truth, either in who they are, in how they show up, or in the work that they produce. And I think that in a world where it feels like it is becoming increasingly harder to be yourself, and that is a habit and a practice that I believe everybody should work on, that is a lifetime practice, they were all a really refreshing reminder of exactly that, being uniquely them, using their unique experiences to show up in the world and improve the world in doing so. So I just feel really, really privileged that I get to have these conversations and I get to speak with these people, and that they impact you as the listener and the viewer if you're watching this. So yeah, I didn't want to carry on with this without just pointing to that. So I've made notes on my guests and I did some note taking, and I'm going to go in order of who I had first, and that was Dr. Daya Grant. Now, Dr. Daya Grant is somebody who I hadn't worked with. We had been loosely connected through my work. I know that she has taken some of my classes on the Peleton platform, and we got in touch because she resonated with a post that I had written, and then she messaged, and then we sort of had a little back and forth, and I was like, this woman is amazing. And then it wasn't until we were actually in the recording that I was like, oh, where has she been all my life? I think for me, she really answered the question of honoring the effort that you've put in, even if the outcome isn't what you wanted. And I spoke about this in my conversation with Abby, I think, in the previous episode to this. And just that we can often be very outcome focused. And, you know, she used the Olympics as an example of, you know, for us lesser mortals who will never compete at the Olympics. I don't mean we're lesser mortals, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not out there doing a world record 100-meter sprint. And we may not understand how those athletes will feel if they didn't podium or they didn't perform as they wanted on the day. Like, it feels like that's 4 years of work. 4 years is a long time. But how she was able to say, well, they break it down into chunks, and did all of the effort over those 4 years align with who they were as a person? Yes, it did. Okay, then whatever the outcome, yes, of course, it'd be amazing to win or come second or whatever, or come third, whatever. But to have moved from a place of respecting your values as an individual, as a human being on that way, amazing. How many of us, if we took 4 years as a time block, which immediately I know makes me go, that's such a long time. It's so far away. But actually to commit to yourself, to commit to your values, and to operate in that way. I even had that conversation with Alex Hipwell when we were talking about, you know, really getting to know yourself, really getting to know your body, tracking things, writing things down, reviewing things. If you spent a whole year dedicated to that, getting to know yourself, what a magical place you would be in, you know, 12 months on now. Obviously, that is not always practical for everybody, but it doesn't mean that you have to write an essay every day. It does just mean that you have a little bit of a connection with yourself to know, like, where am I at? And that was one of the beautiful things about Dr. Daya Grant, is she said that at moments throughout her day, she will just say to herself, how am I? How am I doing? She'll place her hand on her chest and just check in with herself a few times a day. And if that is all we could do for a week, a month, 6 months, I think that's a really special thing. So for me, she really got us thinking and talking about tuning into ourselves, checking in on ourselves, and understanding that the big shiny outcome is nice, but to stay true to ourselves, priceless. So I loved that episode, and I hope you did too. I took lots of learnings from that. My second guess, Logan, my colleague, that guy, like obviously we had the connection because we were both amputees. We were both very fortunate in that the accidents that we were both in really paved, to this day, the work that we do, number one. But more than that, our outlook and our perspective. I feel a bit emotional saying it, actually. Let me take a second. I don't know what life would have been had that not have happened. I can't imagine it, actually, because it has been so foundational to who I am, to my approach, to my unwillingness to accept an expert telling me that I can't do something. I will forever and always see if I can, and I'll never stop doing that. And I know for Logan, that went way beyond what I've done. He moved into educating adaptive athletes, writing whole programs, making us all figure out, let's focus on what we can do. And also his deeper perspective when his arm was amputated, he sometimes when he was in the hospital would pretend that his leg was also amputated to remind himself of just how lucky he was. Again, I feel emotional saying that. Is this therapy? Is this therapy? Somehow it is. Reminiscing is. But he was just 13 years old. And there's something clearly magical about being a child, being a teen, where your perspective is not yet marred by growing older, I'm going to say. And the experiences you have that then tell you things are going to be harder, because I suspect that us having those accidents as adults would have been a very different experience. And so there is real magic to youth and its innocence and its optimism. I don't say that as in chasing youth or anything like that, but how you think. And also we were both in environments. I think his mum, told him the phrase that he uses to this day, it's just an arm. And that was her, trying to make him not feel awful at the time for what had happened. But it stuck with him and he uses it to this day. And for me, I think I was in hospital for so long, 2 months, for this one thing. And I was just surrounded by love, actually. So, my mum came in every day, bless her. We were supposed to move to England. And so that put that to a halt. And my dad he went ahead and went to London for work, and my mum stayed back with my brother. And then eventually we moved to the UK after. But there was something about the environments in which we were both in that allowed us to have that innocent optimism about how little these injuries would hold us back. And I have seen osteopaths, it was mainly osteopaths who I've seen to this day, who still can't quite believe how I adapted, because your big toe is a big deal, as Logan did mention in the episode, but how I adapted to not having it. And I genuinely think it was because I just decided that it wasn't going to impact me. And so it didn't have any impact. Anyway, so it was really nice chatting with him. He's such a gem in the world and in his enthusiasm for what the body can do. So yeah, he's amazing. I'm so lucky to call him my colleague and to see the incredible work that he does every day on the Peleton platform. So that is the amazing Logan. And then we moved on to, lovely Madeleine. Now, we talked about her career a lot. She's a photographer, and my biggest thing about her is just her willingness to take a shot, take a chance. When we spoke about the first day that we met, which was in a park in London, I was with a group of young adults who had just finished their level 3 personal training course. And she was just like, this looks amazing. I want to capture this on camera. And she just came up to me and asked me, and I was like, I'm sure they're going to be very happy to be photographed. Just please ask their permission. Of course, I introduced the whole idea to them first, and then they went ahead and had their photos taken. But I feel like she has this sort of like, not a sixth sense, that's maybe a little, dramatic, but just, I suppose she's a bit of a risk taker, which I love. And it's just like, I'm just going to give it a go. I'm just going to give it a try. In the same way that she got some incredible shots when she stayed out in the sweltering heat in Paris. And she was just like, I could go home, but I just want to try and get this shot. And it's just her attitude to her work, and also then the piece around applying her yoga and breathing and meditation principles to her work as well. So she said that classic line, and now I'm going to paraphrase, but it was something like, go in with a plan, and she researches everything incredibly well. Like sets and production sets and all of those things can be really stressful environments depending on who's in charge, what their energy is like. So you really have to, I learned a lot when I was working on Nike production sets. If we had an athlete, if we were doing a shoot, sometimes I was the talent, I was the one being shot. You have to really be able to connect with lots of different people at lots of different times and at the right time. It's hard to describe, but she knew that she had 2 minutes with this athlete and she wanted to get the best shot that she could get. But I digress. I've actually gone slightly off the point. She said, go in with a plan and then expect the plan to fail. And I was like, oh, I love that so much. Be both completely organized, research, that's where I was going to with the whole set piece, that they can be stressful environments. And so if you research it well, it's not going to be it's going to be less of a stressful environment. But then expecting the plan to fail, I was like, that is the best line I've ever heard in my entire life. Because how often does that come true? That you have this plan and then it's like, oh, no, that's not it. So I just loved her attitude to that. And that she's just this continued risk taker, but also the application of her previous movement principles that she brings into her work. So she's incredibly unique. She's done some amazing work, and we are going to work together at some stage, if not this year, next year. But I'm excited for that and watch this space. So next we have Eartha. Eartha Pond. I mean, Eartha is just doing the most amazing work, literally changing lives, seeing people who are not seen, making them feel seen, that having a ripple effect above and beyond. And her Girls Aloud Foundation, it has to go global. It has to go global. And I say this all the time, that there are more people not working out than there are working out. So we think about the fitness industry and we think about people who are moving and into their fitness and all of that. There are still a gazillion more people who are not working out, who do not see the benefits of movement in terms of how they feel, in terms of their energy levels, all of that. And I'll reference the young girl that she used to teach when she was a PE teacher at school. And this young girl always used to forget her PE, purposefully not have her PE kit so that she did not have to do PE, so that she could sit and read for the hour of PE. And Eartha was insistent on getting her to move. And so she said to her, fine, you don't have to do PE, but if you are going to read, I want you to walk the perimeter of the field or the court or whatever it was, and you're still going to move your body for an hour. That then led to her getting into table tennis, which she did, which then also led to the other girls who she was teaching going, oh, hey, X is now moving, X is doing this. So they're noticing that person who never wanted to move is now moving, and is not only just moving, doing the thing that they were doing before, but is also now into other stuff like that. People take note of that. And, I think I don't know whether I spoke about it. Basically, long story short, we took a bunch of girls from a school who were supposed to be the naughtiest girls in the year. They were 15 and 16. And we did Nike Training Club with them, which was a fitness program. And I remember when I was delivering it with the teacher who was then going to take over from me in the weeks following that at the school, I remember thinking, this group of girls, this is never happening. It is just not happening. They're not interested in movement. They're complaining that their makeup is running. They're not interested. Their legs hurt 5 minutes in. We were easing in. And I remember I went back to the school 6 weeks later. They had led the school sports day with a 5K run. What? All of the girls in the younger years couldn't wait to get to their year so they could also do this Nike Training Club. And that is the ripple effect, not only of them doing that workout, but also of the kind of work that Eartha is doing with her Girls Aloud. So watch this space. It's going to be global. Remember this. Yeah, it has to be. It has to be. Her way of getting movement to people is unique and wonderful. And again, all on her own experience. When she reached new levels and new places because of her talent, she wasn't prepared to be in those places and spaces. And that's a whole other conversation. So yeah, watch this space on that. And then we move to Alex Hipwell, my former colleague at Nike, who just, listen, Alex and her realness. Alex takes no. She is like, you can tell me whatever you want, but I need you to be honest with yourself. I need you to be accountable. And I see it, I do see it. And I think a lot of the time in my work, I'm always very mindful of the person who has least access to what it is I'm trying to get somebody to do. I'm also mindful that people are in different seasons of their life, and some things are easier at some points than others. But I also recognize, and this is a conversation that I was having with a friend of mine, we used to hate the word discipline because it screamed drill sergeant in the fitness industry. But actually, if we see discipline, particularly when it comes to yourself, taking care of yourself, making sure you're resting, making sure you're recovering, being honest about the choices that you are making with the resources that you have, I think it is that thing of it does give you freedom. And, there are things that I can do now that my boys are 6 and 10 that I wasn't able to do 5 years ago when they were younger, but I can do that now. And just the idea of getting to know yourself so well. Obviously, we talked about training around your cycle. We talked about menopause, perimenopause. And I said to Alex, and I laughed, I said, everyone's talking about strength training now. I was like, I'm so annoyed. We've been trying to get people to strength train for years. And now everyone knows that they should do it, But I think that, and this is something that I think is a really important thing, is that building the habit of being yourself, getting to know yourself, what works well for you, what doesn't work well for you. Are you doing anything consistently enough or for long enough to actually see whether it's working or not working for you? We are still people love a shortcut. I mean, listen, I'd love a shortcut if I could have a shortcut, but I just know 21 years deep, the shortcuts do not exist. And still, I feel like I bang my head against a brick wall telling people to fall in love with the process of getting to know themselves. And maybe it's just my personality that I am curious around what my body can do, which then goes all the way back to when I lost my big toe when I was 7 after the accident. So maybe that's just how I'm wired and how I see things. But I feel that if everybody paid that attention to themselves, it is the most incredible journey you could go on to get to know yourself, to be able to make decisions for yourself in different situations because you know yourself that well. Whew, like that is huge. And I remember the introductory episode of this season, and the title of it was "Why I Had to Lose Myself to Find Myself in 2024." And I had gotten to the stage, if you haven't heard that episode, I'd gotten to the stage where I felt like other people were going to increase my value, increase my worth if I hired them to help me in X, Y, and Z area. I would become more valuable, and actually it moved me further away from myself. So I had to have that honesty that Alex speaks of and just be like, listen, like, do what you can with the resources that you have in front of you. And I had to be really honest with myself that actually, for the most part, none of those things were beneficial. And actually, it was absolutely a not trusting myself and not feeling that I was valuable by myself. And so that really caused me to really review all the work that I've done, all the connections that I have. And it's just like, okay, no, you actually don't need any of this. But I had to do that thing to realize that I didn't need it, which is a fairly typical thing for people to go through. Building that habit of getting to know yourself, even listening to Alex's piece around, because the one thing that I always come back to with the whole training around your cycle thing is that, if you have a competition on a day that, you're not going to be at your best, then what? You still have to lean into it with your mindset. And I loved what she said, that on any given day of your cycle, you are actually able to perform. For me, the more interesting piece was around, what days are you more creative? Because I know there's days where I have loads of ideas, and a few days later I might be like, I just can't be bothered with any of those ideas. And so since the chat with her, I have tried to lean into that side of things a lot more. And so far it's proved really interesting and really, I've enjoyed it and have felt a little bit more in control. I will say. And then finally, we had the amazing Abby Ajayi. So, she's another fairly, like, if you can say whatever you want to say, but if you're not putting in the work, then forget about it. And she referred to the common, elevator pitch. If you meet that person that you want to get in front of and you're in the elevator, what are you going to say to them? But then where's your backup? And for her, because she's in TV, her point was, do you have the script that you're talking about? You really want to work with whichever person, but do you have the script? Like, have you written a script? What work have you been doing to back up the fact that you want to do this? Otherwise, it's just lip service. And I was like, oh, yikes. And that's the reality of the industry that she's in. But she also has done incredibly well because she has constantly been putting work in, even when the work wasn't coming in, which obviously requires a huge amount of resilience. And just, again, that like, I'm just going to keep on pushing through with the resources that I have in front of me. And then it just so happened that the script that she had written years ago is now something that she is using. So whilst she may have felt that there was no value at that point in time when she was writing it, it had value many years later. So, and that was the final guest. So I feel like there were quite a different mix of guests. Their approaches were all different, but the same, I believe, in that they, as I've said before, brought their own unique flair to the work that they are putting out in the world now. And the biggest thing, like I say, was just that, reminder to me that we are in an age of not seemingly overnight success, but we're in an age where sometimes you can just do really well without having put a huge amount of work in. And I love that for anybody who's doing that. But for me, because I'm so in love with the process and the layers that come with that, the tapestry that comes with that, and the richness of your work as a result of that, that's the true magic for me anyway. So that is it. That is season 2. I am considering for season 3, because it's going to be a birthday of mine that I've been thinking about for a while. I'll be 47. And I was thinking of doing some solo episodes for that whole season, maybe just like a 5-season episode or a 6-season episode, rounding up lots of different things. There's reason to it all, but it's a birthday that I've been thinking about for a while. It's not like a big number, it's not like a 50 or 60 or whatever, but it's just something that I've been working towards mentally, and I'm just percolating the idea of doing it as a solo season. So if you respond to this podcast at all, let me know what you think of that. That's later on in the year. It's not until June. We might have that. We might have a little solo moment. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to season 2. Thank you so much for listening to my amazing guests. Thank you to my amazing guests. See you next season. Thank you so much.